Resonance addresses a number of different use cases, but the one that we primarily focus on is in the affordable housing and public housing space, or property management space. Um, so what is Resonance? At the end of the day, the goal is to build a unified platform that handles a bunch of different workflows, whether they're AI or regular business workflows on one platform. And what we do is we empower, our customers to manage all this, using AI, using custom workflows to just increase, more than anything, like, tenant satisfaction and operational expenditures. So feel free to let me know if you want me to pause on any one of those slides, but to talk a little bit about the structure of our operation, right? We have several layers to our software stack that allows us at the bottom to set up regular, workflows that you're probably familiar with, where, you're dealing with event management or, contracts or sales or expenses or managing spaces and household profiles. And on top of that, we have a workbench and an orchestration layer, what we call, to allow AI to come in and take action or give context, and essentially an intelligence layer to empower the business workflows that have been customized for you. So one, I think the one that I'll definitely spend some time on is specifically our an affordable housing agent, which we've used to help allocation during renovation or construction projects. So say you have a building, you're renovating the whole building, you need to move tenants out temporarily and move them back. We have an AI agent that focuses on placing people in the best possible, temporary housing and then move them back at scale. Right. So a process that would take dozens and dozens of hours for people to, sit down and like figure out like where are we going to move people. Our agent does that in minutes, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later. So that's just an example of how we apply an AI and agent to the underlying, business suite is what we call it. Essentially, the data on the households, the units, and whatever you're managing. To talk a little bit about our affordable housing use case, here are three example customers, starting with NYCHA. We've one of the projects we've done with them is the FEC project, the Fulton Elliott Chelsea project in New York City, where we've deployed our allocation engine, which I just talked to you about, but also just general unit renovation tracking, household surveys, resident logs, managing work orders for vendors for repairs, and all of that on a, giving the ability to report on that, provide analytics to, at higher levels for executive layers. And through that, we've continued to expand our customer base in this industry. We worked with HOU, Housing Opportunities Unlimited, where we've deployed similar use cases, and also expanded on, what their custom needs were. And then on to more, where an example, another one is our customer Kalel Companies, where we've gone even further into managing the day-to-day construction cycles within affordable housing, balancing that with tenant satisfaction to make sure that, as you're working through, a renovation or construction or managing a building, you're doing that with, being fully cognizant of like, who's the household, what are their needs, what are their issues, what's the history of that household, where do they live, is there, are there inspections needed for a unit? So really, really getting in the weeds of, what these customers need. Kind of expanding on what we've done with HOU, right? We've handled relocation schedules, simulations, and all that ultimately is done through a central data hub, as mentioned earlier, where you're tracking units and tenants, you're tracking communications, scheduling, you're generating documents. A good example is, like if you have to post a notice on somebody's door and you need to do that for, 200 people, 200 units, with one click of the button, you're generating all your PDFs, and merging all that data. You print it, you're done, right? Like the system will prepare all this documentation for you so that you can, not waste time, getting the paperwork right. You're focusing mostly on tenant relations and making sure that the health of the project or the building is at its highest. Again, I'll just keep working through this and happy to pause and expand on this. specifically on the NYCHA side, right here are some like digging a little bit deeper into some of the modules. So for example, unit inventory. So managing, your list of units, any data about like where it is with the issue, photos, inspections, right? Like whether ACM or leaded, inspections have been done. What's the status on that? Is there abatement needed? Right, all that is like being handled at the list level, at the unit level. And for each unit, you can then track activities and say like, well, we need this inspection for this unit, or this unit requires repair, so let me start a new work order. Right, all that is being tracked. On the household side, right, you have a similar experience, but you're focusing on who the household is, who are the members of the household, do they have disabilities, are there reasonable accommodations, right, do they have requirements, are they, do they have a lease signed, are they, so you're tracking lease signing progress, you're tracking inspections in their building, you're tracking the communications you have, like here's the log of the calls we've had with them, or they came in and not came to our office to log a complaint, here's the complaint in the household. So all that info is being captured through survey forms in person, and so because it's unified information, you're able to then act on that very quickly, notify appropriate teams. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I have this issue and I might need social services, you might have a social service professional that's already in the system that, once a household gets flagged, that person gets notified and they can immediately start addressing the issue and, get involved. And they can log into the system with their permissions and see what they need to see about the household without having to have, a long email chain exchange to, figure out what the issue is. On the AI side, the simulation side, I'll show a live version of that, but it gives you just, again, how we've applied AI. And this may or may not apply to you, but it's something that we've deployed to great success across multiple housing, public housing projects where, you're basically doing some kind of work on a building or development and you need to move people. And you can do this at scale, right? So you take a particular household, note that they have disabilities, they need to be on a lower floor, and they don't want to move to this particular building because they had an issue with someone living there, right? And you can do that at scale for, 3,000 households, and the system will take all of that, look at your supply of vacant units or offsite units if you want to place them temporarily, and simulate the scenario across time, right? You say, well, in September, we need to move these 60 people to these 60 vacant units, and it'll tell you if you don't have enough supply, and you're like, actually you're missing some 3-bedroom units in September. So it gets really into the weeds, and I'll show this in a bit. And all this kind of goes into something we did specific to NYCHA, which was their 10 selection and assignment plan. So yeah, I think that's the end of my slides. I kind of want to show you a little bit of a live portal. So I'm just going to click a little bit through the FEC NYCHA project that we did. In this particular project, they're managing 2,000 units, with 180 households. So that kind of gives you a sense where they're working in stages. They're doing renovations. They're doing tenant management. And we have multiple teams working in this portal. We have, the developer related who's managing the work orders and the renovation aspect of the units themselves. And then we have another team called HOU, which I mentioned earlier. They're managing tenant relations and making sure that people are happy. And so all those different teams are working together in the same platform, notifying each other, and leveraging this single source of data, single source of truth rather, that the system offers. So if I click here, I can show you the profile of a particular household, right? The Wayman household, our UI is like, we try and make something that's very user-friendly to, summarize data, call out people like who's the head of household, is there a particular resident coordinator that's assigned to this household? Have we tried to match them to particular units like temporarily, or are we trying to move them? Where do they currently live? Where are they going to move temporarily? Like, again, we're tracking a lot of information, and we do this in an effective way, and we try and make it very easy to update information to, right? If you're somebody who's just coming in on your team who wants to update information, right, they can do that very quickly with forms. At the end of the day, we're providing both a streamlined experience for the data aspect, as well as managing things at scale, where you could look at things and look at information in the way you would on a spreadsheet, for example, and setting filters, exporting data. And just to show you a little bit more, this was an example of like the simulations that we were running live with them, where you would take 72 households and try and place them. And the system would call out, well, actually, there's some issues with moving these people. 5 of them might not be able to move because it's just moving them to a place they don't want to go. They don't want to move to this particular building. And then you'd get metrics on what that AI is giving you in terms of the output, and specifically where individual families are moving to. Again, I don't know if that's essentially, specifically what you're going to need, but it just gives you a sense of how we've applied AI in a really targeted fashion for, the affordable housing space, rather than having something generic. We leverage our technology to give actionable and very valuable results to cut down on time and expenses. And just to give a sense of like this particular problem, if you don't do an efficient job at placing people temporarily, well, that means you might have to place people off-site in a hotel, right? And that's where your expenses come up, and that's where the system actually shows, outside of the time savings, the cost saving is like, well, instead of placing 20 people in a off-site hotel, we only place 5, and that's $60,000, right? Just like that. So that's a very clear metric that we've been tracking with most of our clients in this space to great success. Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of gone through a lot. I've thrown a lot at you. Our system does a lot, right? If I just you can see on the left side, we got tracking units, and the work orders or logs. There's just quite a bit, right? So